Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday. It's March, everyone. The longest winter in many, many years here on the East Coast. It's finally coming to an end. The snow is melting away. The warm weather is coming in. You can smell the baseball in the air after the absolute show that the World Baseball Classic put on last night with the first exhibition games. Absolutely electric atmosphere. The best baseball has to offer. For those of you that think the World Baseball Classic is not worth it and it only can provide negatives and the stats don't count, I don't know if you truly love the game. And I just have so much joy in my heart as the weather warms up. My heart's starting to warm up too. Baseball is feeling back even more recently than it does because of the World Baseball Classic. Spring training is great and all. I love to see guys making the push for those last couple of roster spots, who gets the fifth starter spots on teams. These are all important for fantasy baseball and watching baseball as a whole. But obviously, you want players to stay healthy. Obviously, these home runs and hits and wins and strikeouts don't count towards their baseball reference page, but neither do playoff baseball stats. And that is, I guess, as simply as I can put it. This is the episodes that usually get me the most praise and get me in the most trouble with our 2026 predictions. We always start with the American League, and we start in the East as I'm an East Coast guy. I'll go through each division. I'll talk about each team in order I think they're going to finish in the division from last place to first place. The AL East last year, I think my best take of the entire season, I wish I had put more money on it, was that the Blue Jays had the best chance to go from worst to first. They ended up not only winning the division, but showing everyone on the biggest stage in the playoffs that they were a legit team. And that was obviously my big takeaway. I ended up predicting the Orioles to make the playoffs and the Yankees to miss. Didn't look so good there. The Red Sox, I was right about on top of, outside of obviously knowing that they would lose Rafael Devers. But in terms of their season, I was pretty spot on. And then the Rays, which I confidently predicted to be in the bottom of this division. I think they're still going to be there, but I do think the AL East is going to have a nice rebound year here in 2026. I do think that this was the best division top to bottom in baseball for many years for me growing up, and we are going to see that again. I do believe all five of these teams are going to finish with a 500 record or better. I just think the Rays are going to be at the bottom at 500, and it's not because of a lack of talent. Their team is really, really solid throughout. Obviously, Shane McClanahan being back on the mend. I think a lot of people are not talking about that because he's kind of a glass cannon, but when he is on the mound, he's one of the most electric pitchers in the American League. Some decent depth. They added to their bullpen, trading for Griffin Jackson at the deadline last year, bringing in Steven Matz. So they have some guys back there to get things done. Jonathan Aranda really broke out for them last year. He was an all-star. He's going to be the first baseman of the future for the Rays. So I don't know if Yandy is going to be the DH more primarily this year or what they're going to do there, but those two are really good players. Junior Caminero broke out big time last year with significant power for his age, and he hit an electric home run to the Dominican Republic last night. And obviously you got Carson Williams, and they were a part of not one, not two, but three team trades this offseason. One of them getting Ben Williamson in the trade with Seattle. Ben Williamson was looking like he was going to be the opening day third baseman for the Seattle Mariners. And now the Rays took a liking to him, and I'm really excited for Ben Williamson. This is what the Rays do. They are very analytically sound. They don't have a very big budget. They know how to take in players that are misutilized in other spots, work on what they're good at, and get them out there. So Ben Williamson, to me, is someone that I'm very, very excited for. But when I talk about each team, I'm going to highlight an X factor. And to me, the X factor is pretty simple with the Rays. It's one of my favorite young players in the sport. It's Chandler Simpson. Chandler Simpson last year hit 295 with a 671 OPS plus. So absolutely no pop. But this guy in 100 games played essentially ended up stealing 44 bases as a rookie last year. This is a guy that if you allow him to hit leadoff, you allow him to swipe bags, you could have a real explosive on-base guy for this Rays team. And I think that's what heightens the floor. They had 77 wins last year. So for them to get another 4 wins, I think guys like Ben Williamson, Junior Caminero, Yandy Diaz, Jonathan Ross to do their thing in the infield. But in the outfield, they have a great bounce back candidate in Cedric Mullins. I thought that was a fantastic signing and a very Rays move. I think he's going to have a nice bounce back year. But Chandler Simpson at the top of that lineup for Caminero and Diaz and Aranda to drive in, to be stealing bases, to force wild pitches, to keep the pitchers unresting. I really think he is the X factor for the Rays this year, as this is going to be a year in the process to get back to contending over in Tampa Bay. But I still think that's going to end up being a last place finish in the East. But a tough team that I think some of these young pitchers as well with their lab are going to surprise some people. I'm very excited to watch this Rays team this year. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive than they were for the majority of last season. Now, we talked about improved. We talked about finishing over 500 better. I do think that the Baltimore Orioles had one of the best off seasons in the entire sport. They are in a great position. One of those 3-team deals was trading with the Tampa Bay Rays for Shane Baz to add to their rotation. They signed veteran Chris Bassett. They brought back Zach Eflin. And in their bullpen, they ended up bringing in Ryan Helsley and Andrew Kittredge back. I really liked this offseason. Trevor Rogers had a breakout year for them last year as potentially the ace of the staff. There's a lot to like with the pitching. They don't have a true ace, but I think the combination of a healthy Bradish and Rogers coming off what he was able to do in the second half of last year with the upside of Baz and the depth that guys like Bassett and Eflin, bring to the rotation, I think they're going to be much improved in that category. And then you look at the lineup. Gunnar Henderson led the team in home runs last year with 17. Not only do I think Gunnar is going to have a bounce back year, but you have extended your catcher of the future in Samuel Basallo, who's going to DH to start the year. He has unruly power. I think 20 home runs is the floor for this kid. He's a really scary bat. But instead of putting all the pressure in the world on this kid to hit third or fourth behind Gunnar, they went out and they got real bats this offseason. They brought in Pete Alonso, who's been one of the best power guys, like an automatic 30-100 middle of the order bat. They obviously traded for Taylor Ward, who's another guy with 30 home run pop. They have the bounce back opportunity for Tyler O'Neill, who's a 20+ home run guy when healthy. And I do think that bounce backs for Gunnar Henderson as well as Colton Cowser are very much on the table. So this Orioles team, I think, has one of the top 5 or 10, 5-ish lineups in the American League. And that was a weakness for them last year. The pitching wasn't the only problem. The lineup was not what it needed to be either. And what this allows them to do is it allows, I know Jordan Westberg and Jackson Holliday are already on the already injured. But this allows Adley Rutschman, a guy who a lot of people were predicting to win an MVP not too long ago, has the chance to be lower in the lineup, have less pressure on him, and really be the true X factor for this team. Because if Adley can get closer to his 2023 production, I'm not saying he's going to get all the way back there, but if he can get closer to it in a lineup with a healthy Gunner, with Cowser, with Alonso, with Ward, with O'Neal, with Basayo, with Westberg and Holiday coming back, I really like the Orioles' chances of being on that wild card bubble. I still think if they had a true ace, I think if Westberg and Holiday were coming together healthy, I'd be even higher on the O's. I do think they're going to be above 500. I do think they're going to be a much more competitive team. And if they're on that wild card bubble and they buy one of their needs at the deadline, this could be a playoff team. I'm very, very excited about the O's. I know friend of the show, Will Steff, is a big fan of the Orioles and wants that ace pitcher. I think they've done enough this offseason to be competitive again, and I think that's all you can ask for here in March. Now, my Boston Red Sox, for all intents and purposes, had a good offseason. Okay, so was it the offseason I wanted and the majority of fans were expecting? I don't think so. But in terms of adding wins to the roster, did they have a good offseason? I think they did. They bolstered the pitching rotation with Sonny Gray and Ranger Suarez and Johan Oviedo as depth. They ended up adding to their lineup. They ended up getting Caleb Durbin to replace Alex Bregman at third base. He was third place in Rookie of the Year last year in the National League. He's a solid, scrappy player. And they ended up doing what they needed to do and get a guy who can play first base, and Wilson Contreras, who I think is in for a big year in Fenway. He just seems like one of those guys that's going to hit really well in this ballpark. The Red Sox are in my playoff picture yet again. I do still think that they're a step or two behind the other two teams in this division. I don't think they made up that ground. Garrett Crochet is a true ace, a guy who's going to be a Cy Young contender for the next few years here, is an absolute gem to watch. I like that Bayo is no longer expected to be the 2 behind him. He's slotted into the 4th spot. I like the fact that the Red Sox have young pitching controllable depth and guys like Peyton Tolley and Connolly Early and Cutter Crawford who can make spot starts and fill in for injuries down the stretch. The X factor for me with the Boston Red Sox right now is Aroldis Chapman. And I understand a lot of people are looking at Christian Campbell or Tristan Casas or Marcelo Meyer, these post-hype sleeper guys, which if one or two of them hit, the outcomes for the Red Sox can go way up. But Aroldis Chapman was absolutely nails last year. And while I see no reason physically to be worried about him, he still throws incredibly hard. He's in fantastic shape. He is 38 years old as of last Saturday. The last couple of years before he came to Boston, he was not a lights-out closer. And for him to go from an ERA in the 3s to an ERA that was almost below 1, a 1.17, that's a huge jump. And if Aroldis Chapman is not a shutdown closer again like he was last year, in 61 innings pitched, he only gave up 28 hits and 3 home runs, struck out 85 batters. He was unreal. 32 saves, a 3.51 ERA plus, which, was the highest of his career at age 37. You need Aroldis Chapman to be shut down at the back end of your bullpen again, especially because you didn't really add to that bullpen this offseason. They lost Justin Wilson as a lefty reliever. They lost Steven Matz as a lefty reliever. They traded some of their relieving depth. personally, I would not mind to see Peyton Tolley as the high leverage lefty arm in the bullpen. I think that you could have a super pen, as people like to say, if you have Whitlock in the setup role, Slayton as the high leverage right-hander, and Tolley as the high leverage left-hander with Chapman in the back end. I think that's a ridiculous bullpen. But right now, Chapman is like the guy that's a lefty in the bullpen. I know Giovanni Myron is going to get a chance to crack open the year, and they have some other guys down at Worcester that are going to get opportunities. But Aroldis Chapman, to me, is the big X factor in this team because you're going to get a lot of more quality starts, I think, from the starting pitching staff. The lineup does not have a ton of power. It's more of a bat-to-ball team. And the defense is improved, but it's not elite in the infield. There's going to be a lot of close games, and if you don't have a lockdown closer, which I hope Aroldis Chapman is, he's only 33 strikeouts away from the all-time relief pitcher record, and he's only 33 saves away from 400 in his career. I think hitting both those milestones makes him a future Hall of Famer. And like I said, physically, he's a freak. I don't see him slowing down, but you never know when father time comes for you. And relievers year to year can be extremely erratic in terms of results. So if Aroldis Chapman is not a shutdown closer like he was for you last year, I think that is the biggest X factor that the Red Sox have. It's great that you have these upside young guys that are going to start the year in Worcester, like Tristan Casas, like Christian Campbell, like Conley Early, like Peyton Tolley. It's great to have those guys on the 40-man roster. But I don't expect all four of those guys to have a major impact on this Red Sox season. I expect Aroldis Chapman's results to have an extreme impact on the Red Sox 2026 season, where I still think playoffs is well in route. Now, the Blue Jays, I picked them to go from worst to first last year. They made a run to the World Series. They ended up losing Bo Bichette, missing out on the Kyle Tucker sweepstakes, but they ended up having a really solid offseason. They brought in Okamoto to be their third baseman, shifting Ernie Clement over to second base and Andres Jimenez over to shortstop, which he was in the playoffs. So their infield is fine. They ended up signing Dylan Cease to their starting rotation. They're getting a full year of Shane Bieber. They're getting Dylan Cease added to a rotation with Max Scherzer returning for depth, with Jose Barrios returning for depth, and with Gossman still locked into the top of. This Blue Jays team is really good. They're going to be one of the top teams in the American League again. I don't see them slowing down. But I do think that they're going to finish behind the Yankees this year. And the reason I think that is mainly because of their bullpen. And I think it looked really good in the playoffs last year until it didn't. You had guys that were really performing well above their means, but I think there's plenty of reasons why the Blue Jays were in on multiple high leverage relievers this offseason as well. They checked in on Edwin Diaz and guys of that nature. Is because Jeff Hoffman is good, but is he the lockdown guy that you need? Obviously, you got guys like Varland and Lauer and Little. Cody Ponce, I think, is going to bounce between the rotation and the bullpen. Trey Savage obviously broke out in the playoffs last year. This pitching staff is good. Is it super deep, especially in the bullpen? I don't think it is, but it's a good pitching staff. I would feel good about having that as my pitching staff heading into the season. They have Alejandro Kirk, one of the best framers in baseball, a really good contact hitter as well. Addison Barger, I think, has a chance to be the second most valuable hitter in this lineup this year behind Vlad Jr. He had a phenomenal season and is only 26 years old. I really like him as their everyday right fielder. And then their outfield, I mean, they took a shot on Jesus Sanchez to give him something. They have Nathan Lukes as well. Davis Schneider's going to flip between the infield and the outfield. George Springer, as their DH, had a historic season for his age last year. Do I think he's going to take a slight step back? Probably, but he's still one of the best playoff performers ever and is a guy you want in that clubhouse. Dalton Varsho is a great defensive center fielder that can hit a little bit. So this Blue Jays team is really solid. I just don't know how I feel about the pitching staff when I compare it to the Yankees. And we'll get into that. But my X factor for this Blue Jays season is a guy that I just hinted at in Trey Savage. Because right now, I think their pitching staff, their top three, if you would call it that, of Gausman and Cease and Savage. Savage has very little major league experience. He's got electric stuff. He's got swing and miss stuff. Is he going to continue to profile as a front end starter, or is he going to have a sophomore slump, or team's going to start figuring him out? Is he going to be that guy that elevates this team from a playoff team to a World Series contender again, like he did last year? I think his range of outcomes is the most tantalizing and exciting. You know what you're getting out of Gausman. You know what you're getting out of Cease. A lot of swing and miss innings. And in the back end, with guys like Scherzer and Ponce and stuff like that, you know what you're getting there too. Barrios, not super high quality. Savage has a chance to make a three-headed monster. And that's really what I think is the difference between them and the Yankees, is looking at the starting pitching staff. Because while he's not going to be ready for opening day, Garrett Cole's going to play a big role on the Yankees season this year. And adding him to a rotation with Max Fried, with Carlos Rodon, and then Cam Schlitter, who absolutely destroyed my Red Sox in the playoffs last year, having the chance as the fourth guy, Savage being the third guy. I think that extra spot in the rotation is really, really major. And then obviously you have Luis Gil and a bullpen that, even though it lost Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, is still really, really solid with David Bednar at the back end. I like Camilo Duvall stuff a lot. I think he's a great bounce back candidate this year. Like I said, relievers year to year can really have a range of outcomes. Jake Bird was phenomenal in the first half of the Rockies. I think they could still unlock something with him. Tim Hill has been a lefty specialist they've been able to rely on for a long time. Elmer Rodriguez Cruz has been Fernando Cruz and Elmer Rodriguez both have electric stuff as well. And Ryan Yarborough of former Dodger fame was really solid in his role with them last year. I don't think this bullpen is taking a big step back and has a chance to take a step forward. They just have guys that can hit everywhere. I know they ran back the same team, but same team had the same record as the Blue Jays last year. The Blue Jays, you can still argue, got better. Replacing Chris Bassett with Dylan Cease, that's an improvement. But is replacing Bo Bichette with Okamoto or an improvement? Probably not. But the Yankees, having Wells behind the plate, the Dominican catcher, that still makes me laugh every time I see it. I think another big part to the Yankees floor, sorry, Lou, if you're watching this, is that Anthony Volpe is not going to start the season as the shortstop. I think Jose Caballero, much higher floor guy who can steal bases and play the shortstop position. I like that a lot. Jazz Chisholm said he's going 50-50 this year, and I don't think that's the most crazy thing a player's ever said. Paul Goldschmidt back in the fold, platooning with Ben Rice at first base. Ryan McMahon, a guy who's had 20-plus home run pop before and plays Gold Glove defense at third base. And then in the outfield, Bringing Grisham back after his breakout season with the Yankees last year. Cody Bellinger, I think, was a huge person to bring back. And Aaron Judge, the best player in the American League, arguably the best hitter in baseball. If the main players here play the whole season, I don't think there's a team in the American League East that will win more games than the Yankees. I just don't. I wish I would say otherwise. I really wish I did. The Red Sox are a few steps away. I think the Blue Jays are a step or two away. The Orioles are a couple leaps away, and the Rays are a big, long jump away. The Yankees are going to be good, and Aaron Judge is a big part of the reason for it. He's having an unreal prime, and he's surrounded by really solid hitters, a great pitching staff with a back end of the bullpen that can play with anybody. Moving on to the AL Central here, I'll try to pick up the pace a little bit. My X factor for the Yankees, by the way, is Garrett Cole. And I think that'll be the biggest difference between last year's Yankee squad and this year's. The AL Central, the Minnesota Twins, I have finishing at the bottom of the division. I know the White Sox have been historically bad, but the White Sox tried this offseason to get better, and the Twins did not, so I'm giving them credit where it's due. And also the Twins, I predicted to make the playoffs last year, and they made me look like a fool. So I'm making them go in the last place spot. They have some interesting guys. They got Mick Abel in the Duran trade. They got Taj Bradley in the Griffin Jacks trade. So those are some guys that are going to factor into their rotation this year. They've already lost Pablo Lopez for the year. Joe Ryan is dealing with an injury to start the year. Bailey Ober, who I like, is a fine pitcher in the middle of that rotation. They got some flashes out of Simeon Wood Richardson last year, but I don't think that pitching staff after Joe Ryan is really scaring anybody. Ryan Jeffers is one of the most overlooked players in the game. He's a really good hitting catcher that fields the position well. They added Josh Bell to play some first base and DH. Royce Lewis continually injured. They got Eric Wagman from the Marlins in a trade to play a little bit of first base as well. Cody Clemens is going to factor in a little bit. Brooks Lee was a top-end prospect that didn't really do much for him last year. And they have a disgruntled Byron Buxton out there in an outfield with guys like Matt Wallner and Alan Roden and James Outman. I'm not saying there's no upside, but the upside's pretty low. But the one guy that has real upside in my X factor for the Twins this year is Mr. Luke Keeschel. So real dialed in baseball guys and fantasy baseball guys probably already know about Luke Keeschel. But for those of you that don't, last year, he had 49 games played and ended up hitting 302 with an 827 OPS, hit 4 home runs, and was a really, really solid professional-looking hitter. Swiped 14 bags. This is a guy that I think has 2020 upside, has a really good chance to be the Twins all-star if Joe Ryan deals with the injury bug or Byron Buxton gets hurt again. Luke Keeschel could be an all-star this year for these Twins. I really like him. He's 23 years old, really good guy in AL-only leagues or just fantasy baseball leagues in general to grab late if you skip on second base. I really like Luke Keeschel, and I think he's the X factor because their chances to finish above the White Sox out of the gutter in last place, I don't think are very high. But if Luke Keeschel hits to his full potential and you get a healthy Joe Ryan season with a healthy Byron Buxton season, that might be enough to finish ahead of the White Sox. But I really don't know if it is. Luke Keeschel, remember the name. As for the White Sox, I really like their offseason. I think they had a top 10 offseason in baseball in terms of improving their team. They literally tried to win baseball games, which is something they haven't been able to say for many years. Obviously, last year, the team was still bad. But they ended up bringing it back Eric Fetty, who found himself there last year. They ended up having trades for David Sandlin and Drew Thorpe and guys that are going to factor into this rotation behind Shane Smith, who was their all-star last year. The pitching staff doesn't have a Joe Ryan in it, okay? But I think that the other guys have just as much upside as the other Twins pitchers. In terms of the catching position, Kyle Teel is one of the best young catchers in the game. I miss him. As a Red Sox fan, I was expecting him to be the catcher of the future for us, and I expect him to have a really nice year for a catcher. He is really, really smart with how he frames the strike zone. He's a good hitter, gives professional at-bats, and is going to be a real player for this team. They obviously have Colson Montgomery, who has a chance to be team MVP this year. In limited sample size last year, he looked like an absolute superstar. And I think surrounding him with guys like Miguel Vargas and Curtis Mead and Chase Meidroth and Luis Angel Acuna, that might be enough to have an exciting infield if you're a White Sox fan. But to me, the outfield with Austin Hayes and Andrew Benintendi, there's just not enough there. I would have liked to see them sign another veteran outfielder that was out there, really try to go and win some games. But to me, the X factor for this team is the guy who I think was one of the best signings of the offseason, and that's Munetaka Murakami. This guy is going to be able to fly under the radar playing in Chicago, and he's got unreal power. He's shown it off in spring training. He showed it off in the WBC. If this can be a 25-plus home run bat for the White Sox behind Montgomery and Teel, I think that the White Sox could make some noise, enough so to finish ahead of the Twins, which is something that I don't think anyone's really predicting right now, but I think is very much in the range of outcomes. I like what the White Sox are doing, and I'm excited for what they have in store. Now, as for the Kansas City Royals, I think they're going to finish around where they finished last year. And it's not because I don't believe. I'm one of the biggest Bobby Witt fans here on the East Coast. I've loved him since he came up. The way he plays, the profile, everything about him. And it's no shock that he became one of the biggest superstars in the game to me. This rotation is solid, okay? With guys like Bubic, who was my X factor for them last year, was an all-star caliber pitcher, was really good. The emergence of Noah Cameron, the just stability that guys like Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha bring to the rotation, and obviously Cole Reagan's at the top. It's a good rotation. The bullpen, they brought in Matt Strahm, who was one of the best left-handed relievers in baseball last year, but it's just not what I'd like to see for a team that's really trying to take that next step. I don't think they had invested much in there. Salvador Perez is making a real Hall of Fame case, which is something I wouldn't have seen coming 5 years ago, but has really, really helped his case. He's great to see a one franchise player like that still involved. Michael Garcia and Vinny Pasquantino at the corners are two very overlooked players in their positions. Really, really solid. Jonathan India, I think, has a chance to really bounce back at second base. We've seen him hit well at the big league level before. I think he can do it again. And in the outfield, which is huge over at Kauffman, even with the Walls brought in a little bit this year, they're putting Jack Caglione in right, who I think has a ton of upside with the Wall moved in and his power profile to put the Royals on another level as an offense. But also you bring in a DH right fielder type in Starling Marte, who I think is going to platoon with him out there between DH and right field. as well as Isaac Collins, who was 5th in the National League Rookie of the Year voting for the Brewers last year. Solid player playing out in the left. Kyle Isbell's a fantastic defensive center fielder. And you brought in Lane Thomas as well, who might be a bounce back candidate. So this Royals team's good. I don't think it's great. There's a name that I've excused, and it's because that's my X factor. Carter Jensen, who's going to get the everyday catching role, or the majority of the catching role this year. Last year, he had a 941 OPS in 20 games played. 3 home runs, 13 RBIs, walked 9 times, slugged .550 with a .391 on base. If the Royals, on top of Pasquantino, Garcia, and Witt, that part of the lineup's solid, locked and loaded. Perez and Marte, what they're going to give you. You want bounce backs from guys like Jonathan India and Lane Thomas and a step forward from Caglione and Collins. But Carter Jensen, having that kind of offensive profile at the catcher position, the Royals know from not that long ago about what that was to have a Salvador Perez. Looks like they might have done it again. This kid's 22 years old. I really like him. With the walls moved in, especially because he bats lefty. They brought the right field wall in. I think Carter Jensen's going to hit 20 home runs this year at the catcher spot. And I think that mixed with Caglione's power and Pasquantino's power and Salvi's power, Bobby Witt can still hit him out. This Royals team is going to be right on that wild card bubble again. I don't love their bullpen, so I'm not predicting them to make the playoffs, but I think they're going to be good enough to be in that conversation. Now, it's hard to see a team make this historic comeback like they did last year and have the reigning back-to-back manager of the year in Cleveland and not pick them to win the division like I have the last couple of years. But I'll tell you why I'm not picking them this year. I still think they're going to be a real solid playoff contender, but I'm not picking them to win the division. And it's because this pitching staff, it just seems to be getting worse. Obviously, the loss of Emmanuel Clase looms large, as good as Cade Smith is and some of these other guys in the bullpen. Losing him and that contract he was on is a major loss for a team that usually wins its game during the pitching battle. Tanner Bybee is fine. They're trying to get stuff out of some other guys here. Gavin Williams had some great performances, had some not so great performances last year. Bo Naylor hasn't clicked on all cylinders. David Fry took a huge step back after being an all-star the year before. Kyle Manzardo is one of their best hitters, and he's not, someone that scares me. CJ Kayfus is going to be playing outfield this year because they don't have a spot for him at first base or DH. Brian Rocchio and Gabriel Arias, Juan Brito. These are the kind of guys that are going to get regular playing time around Jose Ramirez. And that stinks, man. Steven Kwan is still in this lineup at the top of it, and Jose Ramirez will drive him in plenty. But to me, the X factor for this team is Chase DeLauter, who the Guardians gave a shot in the playoffs to make his major league debut. He had a really ugly error playing the outfield. He did not do much with the bat, which is his number one tool. If Chase DeLauter can strike some fear behind Kwan and Ramirez 1 and 2, if he can do that, maybe the Guardians do win the division again. I'm not going to bet on it, though, and I don't think either you should either. Now, the Tigers I have finishing first this year. I had them missing the playoffs last year. I thought that the Royals were better suited from 2024's like shocking performance to repeat it again than the Tigers were, but ended up being the Tigers that had the better performance in 2025. All they went out there and did was added Kenley Jansen, a Hall of Fame reliever, to the back of that bullpen, and Framber Valdez and Justin Verlander in a rotation behind Tarik Skubal, with Jack Flaherty still in the mix, Casey Mize still in the mix. This team is just really solid. Just really solid all throughout the bullpen. Now everyone behind Jansen falls in nicely. They were kind of closing by committee last year. I really, really like the Tigers pitching staff. That's why they're number one for me in this division. But it doesn't stop with the pitching staff. Dylan Dingler broke out last year as a catcher. I really liked his performance. Jake Rogers has been good as a hitting catcher in the past. In their infield, Spencer Torkelson was my X factor for them last year, and he ended up having 31 home runs. If he can perform like that again, that's fantastic. Gleyber Torres was an all-star last year. He signed his qualifying offer. He's back in that lineup. He's a good hitter up the middle. Zach McKinstry was an all-star last year. You have a prospect with high upside in Trey Sweeney trying to crack in there. And Javier Baez, who was revived from the dead, I didn't even have it factored into my Tigers plans last year, had an all-star first half and is a super utility, useful player now for them. Add that with Riley Green, add that with Kerry Carpenter, add that with Jahmai Jones as a lefty masher, and the fact that this team has some of the top tier upside prospects in their farm system to supplement either through a trade for a need later or to come up and play alongside these guys. I don't know how you pick a team that's not the Tigers to win the Central this year. I really don't. They are just really solid. They're built through pitching, but they have the lineup in the ballpark to do that with. Now we're going to kick the can out in the AL West. The Angels with first-year manager Kurt Suzuki are finishing in the bottom. I respect the Angels for never just completely quitting. They went out this offseason. They took some shots on Drew Pomeranz reclamation project and Grayson Rodriguez reclamation project and Alek Manoah. But this team, they brought in Kirby Yates hoping that they can revive his career. Jordan Romano. I don't think all those guys are going to hit. I think as a bad team, it's smart to fire 1-year deals and stuff on guys like that and try to get them to hit, because that's how you either get talent cheap or you can flip them for real prospects to help you later. But that pitching staff is ugly behind Yusei Kikuchi. Real ugly. Logan O'Hoppe and Travis d'Arnaud, a catching duo that is probably fine on MLB The Show, but in real life, it's been a little disappointing. They're good players, not great. d'Arnaud's 37 already. We're old, people. We are old. I remember when he was the top prospect in the Toronto Mets trade, and now he's 37 years old. Their infield, they traded for Vaughn Grissom. I think they're going to give him playing time. Yoan Moncada's back at third base. Christian Moore is getting a chance to be the opening day second baseman. Kyron Paris had a hot month last year. Nolan Shanwell, Mr. Patient, good but not great player. And of course, Zach Neto, who's quickly become the best player on this team. He is really, really fun to watch. A solid all-around shortstop. But to me, the X factor for the Angels, you could have named him every year for the last couple years, is Mike Trout. Because Joe Adell has finally arrived as a real contributor in the outfield. Josh Lowe, I think, is a good, I guess, reclamation project again in the outfield. Jorge Soler is still there. But Mike Trout hasn't played 100 games in a season in a very long time. He's moving back to center field this year on his own ask. It's kind of make or break it time now for Mike Trout. He is sitting at 404 career home runs. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer in the future. But if him and the Angels are going to be relevant, even for a couple months to start the season, it's going to be because Mike Trout's healthy and Mike Trout's hitting. Last year, he hit 26 home runs. He still has the power to do so. But we have to see him play not a full season, but close. Because otherwise, I don't think there's a real reason to watch Angels baseball this year. I'm sorry to say it. I really am. They look like a team that is built to sell at the deadline. Zach Neto's good. Joe Adell's pretty good. They have some other upside young guys. But a lot of the players that are going to be getting regular opportunities are guys where if they hit, they're probably out the door in July. Mike Trout is stuck there because of the contract, because he wants to be there. He's a loyal guy, which I'll really respect. But I want to see Mike Trout play a full season. That's the reason to watch the Angels this year. And he's the X factor for their season for that reason alone. Now, I do think that the Sacramento A's are going to be improved from last year's performance. I do. However, I do think that they're going to be the fourth best team in this division. Now, it's mainly, it goes back to what I was talking about with the last two divisions. What decided placing was kind of the pitching staff, the starting rotation. This A's pitching staff is pretty ugly. Luis Severino is there. He's a solid innings eater. Jeffrey Springs had some good starts for them last year. They got some amazing starts out of Luis Morales late, Jacob Lopez at the beginning of the season. But I'm not inspired by any of them. The A's, hitting in a minor league ballpark, have a fun lineup for fantasy baseball. Shea Langeliers, Bangaliers, as many call him, ended up hitting 31 home runs last year, hitting 277. That'll work. Jacob Wilson almost won the batting title as a rookie. Plays good defense. That'll work. Lawrence Butler started off the season slow, ended up with respectable numbers, hitting 21 home runs and stealing almost 20 bases. Brent Rooker is a 30-100 guy. Really, really solid. Tyler Soderstrom extended after a breakout year last year where he had 25 home runs. He's another guy that get 30 home runs. But Nick Kurtz is the reason to watch them this year. He is the X factor. Last year, in 117 games played, he had 36 home runs and drove in 86. 1,000 OPS. Hitting 290. If Nick Kurtz plays a full season, I understand half of it's in a minor league ballpark, but if you look at his road splits as well as his best game of the season, his 4 home run game, they were on the road. He has a chance to be a 50-plus home run, 5+ WAR first baseman, down ballot MVP guy. He's 22 years old. I think that lineup is so scary that a breakout for Denzel Clark with the bat or a rebound for Jeff McNeil at the bottom of that lineup is on the table, hitting in that ballpark, playing on that team. But the A's are going to have to score a lot of runs to be competitive because that pitching staff and the bullpen not having Mason Miller in the back anymore, it's rough. But what's exciting about this team is they not only have a great lineup now, but they have guys like Leo DeVries and stuff coming up through the pipeline. This lineup's going to continue to get scary, and by the time they move to Las Vegas with a core of really healthy bats, this is going to be a team that a lot of people jump on the bandwagon for. Now, the Texas Rangers were a team that I considered putting ahead of the Houston Astros. I genuinely did. And it's because the pitching staff is still really good. They lost Tyler Mahle, but Jacob deGrom bounced back big time last year. Nathan Eovaldi was as solid as ever. They traded for Mackenzie Gore. I really like Jack Leiter. The depth isn't great. They brought back Jordan Montgomery to eat innings. They have Kumar Rocker and Michael Otanez and stuff, but this team isn't super deep in the starting rotation with the guys at the top in deGrom and Eovaldi having lengthy injury histories. And the lineup, they shed a lot of the guys that you think of when you think Texas Rangers baseball. Now, Danny Jansen and Kyle Higashioka, that's a solid catcher platoon. They can both hit. They can both field. Fine. They're still relying on Jake Burger at first base. Jock Peterson's going to get some time at first base this year because they really believe in Jake Burger. Josh Young hasn't been able to stay healthy. I like him. Hasn't been able to stay healthy. Ezekiel Duran and Josh Smith platooning and just being great utility guys. Corey Seager, obviously the best player on the team, a shortstop, and a contract that doesn't look very movable. But their outfield is interesting to me. And I'm not going to tell you Evan Carter's the X factor, although I do think Evan Carter has a phenomenal opportunity here at the beginning of the year to be the center fielder and to break out finally at the regular season level. I was big on him coming off the World Series run, and he hasn't done anything since. Wyatt Langford is extremely interesting with 22 home runs last year, 775 OPS. I think there's still another layer for him to unlock. But change of scenery candidate, Brandon Nimmo. Last year, 262 batting average, 25 home runs, 92 RBIs with a 760 OPS plus. And if you look at his career, he's a guy that can give you 20, 25 home runs with 90 to 100 RBIs while stealing you 15, 20 bags. I think Nimmo's going to get some time at DH this year to save his legs. And I think Nimmo is going to secretly be the most important player in this lineup because obviously you know about Langford and you know about Seager, but Nimmo, I think with the bat is going to really help them keep the line moving, drive in runs, be a producer for them, and add some stability that was very much missing last year when Garcia wasn't hitting, when Simeon wasn't hitting, when Young was hurt, when Carter was either not playing well or hurt, when Heim was hurt. The list goes on and on. Berger was not performing. Nimmo adds stability to that lineup and will make the Rangers somewhat interesting this summer because that pitching staff is really good when healthy. But I do have the Astros finishing just ahead of them. I have them making the playoffs again. I understand they missed last year. I understand they're not the Astros of old. But this Astros team is really solid. I would have loved if they signed Valdez back or brought in a true number 2 starter behind Hunter Brown. But I think that the guys that they do have there are solid enough to start the year, and that they have the prospect and position player depth in order to get a better starter down the line. Josh Hader in the back end of that bullpen also adds some stability and trust. Yainer Diaz, solid catcher. Their infield, Jeremy Pena just fractured his thumb, so he won't be performing in the WBC. But him with great bounce back candidates in Correa and Walker, along with Paredes and Jose Altuve. They got plenty of guys that can do their thing. Nick Allen is a good defensive shortstop / utility guy. But the X factor to me, and the reason why I'm picking the Astros to make the playoffs again, is because of Yordan Alvarez. How quickly people forget. This man's only 28 years old. And he is only 1 year removed from being one of the best hitters in baseball. 2024, 170 hits, 34 doubles, 35 home runs. Struck out less than 100 times, hit 308, 392, 567, 5 WAR. He's one of the best hitters in baseball. People have forgotten about him. He's going to play outfield. He's going to DH. He's going to do some things. But I'm excited for Yordan Alvarez. I think it raises the floor and ceiling of this offense so much because you have guys that are professional hitters like Jose Altuve, like Christian Walker, like Isaac Paredes, like Carlos Correa. Adding a bat like Yordan Alvarez with young guys like Yainer Diaz and Cam Smith that I still think have another layer to unlock. The Astros are going to be back in the playoffs this year. They're built to be a winning franchise. And of course, I couldn't in my right mind pick a team other than Seattle to win the division. On paper, they are by far the best team. Their rotation has been the best in the division for a while. Brian Wu, it seems like every year a new guy becomes the number one guy. It was Luis Castillo, and then George Kirby broke out. It was George Kirby, and then Logan Gilbert broke out. And now last year, Brian Wu broke out. They have 4 guys that could anchor a rotation. That's what I get out of this. But their bullpen with Andres Munoz at the back end is really, really solid. I like what they do with their lineup. I think it's really, really exciting. Even if Cal Raleigh doesn't have 60 home runs in his back pocket again, I don't think he does. But if he hits 35, 40 runs, sure, we're going to see a really solid outcome for this Mariners team. And I think it's because the floor has been raised across the board. Cal Raleigh doesn't have to be that superhero anymore because of guys like Brendan Donovan being brought in, like Josh Naylor being locked in. They're going to give Leo Rivas a chance to beat out Miles Mastrobuoni at third base. And I like Rivas. But their outfield, Julio Rodriguez being the superstar that he is, Randy Arozarena with a nice bounce back season last year, making the All-Star team, and then a platoon of Canzone and Refsnyder and Wright. This team's going to make some noise, and I think should be the favorites to win the division. If they don't, it'll be a big disappointment. This Mariners team is just so deep, and I'm really, really looking forward to watching them play baseball this year. Now, as we pass the hour mark here on the Solo Shot Sports Podcast with the throwback down the third base line to this date in baseball history, March 7th had a lot to choose from, but it was pretty clear when I looked at the list what I was going to choose, and it was because on this date in 1914, George Herman Ruth hit his first professional home run as a member of the Baltimore Orioles in Fayetteville. And when the players had learned that Dunn had legally adopted Ruth to keep him with the team, it resulted in the players teasing him, calling him Dunn's baby, which was later shortened to Baby and Babe. So the legend was not only born on this day in 1914, but the nickname that everyone in the baseball world knows was also born of this home run and exhibition game at Cape Fear Fairground, which this home run was measured or expected to go 400 plus feet. He personally described it saying, "I hit it as I hit all the others by taking a good gander at the pitch as it came up to the plate, twisting my body into a backswing, and then hitting it as hard as I could swing. I got some bigger places than Fayetteville after that, but darn few as exciting." Absolute, just amazing history, and that's why his signature, which is as iconic as he is down at the bottom of the scorecard. We're going to run through my playoff predictions and the awards now. Obviously, as I was going through, I tried to talk about who I thought were the X factors and where I thought teams were going to finish. My playoff teams for this season, I have the Yankees winning the East, I have the Tigers winning the Central, and I have the Mariners winning the West, with my 3 wildcard teams being the Blue Jays, Red Sox, and Astros. Guardians, Orioles, Rays being on that bubble. But when it comes to awards, I'm going to start with Manager of the Year. I forgot to predict Manager of the Year last year. But I think this year it's pretty easy in terms of just what I'm expecting from the team, in terms of taking that next step and doing what they need to do. I think AJ Hinch is going to win Manager of the Year. I think that this is a really big calendar year for the Tigers. It's the last year of Tarik Skubal. You brought in Valdez. You have some other pieces in place. It's do or die time, and I expect them to have the best record in the American League. I expect them to be very, very good and push for October. In terms of the MVP award, I think as long as Aaron Judge plays enough games, it's his award to lose. If Cal Raleigh, with his historic catcher season last year, could not win the award, then I don't really think anyone else can. I know some people are getting hot with the takes and are predicting for a crazy Bobby Witt Jr. season, or a bounce back Gunnar Henderson season, or a breakout Roman Anthony season, or Nick Kurtz hitting 60 plus home runs. We just saw Cal Raleigh play Gold Glove caliber defense at catcher, break the home run record not only for switch hitters but for catchers, and he didn't win the award on a first place playoff team. I don't think Nick Kurtz, for an athletics team that's not going to make the playoffs, even if he hits 60 plus home runs, is going to do it in a minor league ballpark. That's going to be a retractor statement very easily made, even though Nick Kurtz is a beast. I love Roman Anthony. Looks great in the Team USA uniform. I don't think he's beating out Judge for an MVP just yet. And Jose Ramirez, a guy who I predicted to do so a couple years ago, he's great. But again, I don't think he's going to do anything special enough if Judge plays enough games to beat him out. The only guy that really has a chance, and he almost did it once, but also got beat out again, is Bobby Witt Jr., because he's the only one that I see having the opportunity to have a double-digit WAR season, 10 plus WAR. Bobby Witt Jr. can do that. Now, even if he does do that, he's shown that he's not going to necessarily win the award, because Judge's hitting stats are just so absurd. He won the batting title last year with 50-something home runs. That is hard to do. And the most home runs ever hit by a batting champion. We are blessed to watch Aaron Judge play. I hate that he plays for the Yankees. I do. But I love greatness. I will respect greatness. And Aaron Judge, if you pick anyone else for MVP, you could make some money. But the chances, much like Vegas, the casino always wins. The house always wins. The judge always wins. In terms of the Cy Young pick, a lot of people would say, oh, same logic as Judge. No one can beat Tarik Skubal. I think there's a couple guys that can. It's very hard to win back-to-back Cy Youngs, which he just did. It's even harder to win 3+ straight. The guys that have done that, being like Greg Maddux and Randy Johnson most recently, it's the upper tier of the upper tier, and I think would put Tarik Skubal into another stratosphere if he was able to do it. I do think the Tigers are going to have a fantastic season, have the best record in baseball. Skubal's going to be up there as a Cy Young finalist if all things go right. Garrett Crochet is so good at baseball. But a part of the reason why I think the Houston Astros are making the playoffs this year is because I believe in Hunter Brown. Now, Hunter Brown was a down ballot Cy Young guy this past season. I was really, really impressed with what I saw from the kid. I expected him to be an X factor for them, and he did not disappoint. But last year, 6.1 WAR, a 2.43 ERA, and in 185 innings pitched, he struck out 206 batters, a 1.72 ERA plus. If the Astros get back to the playoffs and he has closer to 20 wins than 12, I think there's a real shot, because of the division he plays in, that he has the ERA title. And with the ERA title and being more important to his team than Tarik Skubal with a more fulled out pitching staff and roster, I'm going Hunter Brown. I don't want to just do complete chalk again. And I think Hunter Brown actually has a legitimate shot. I think Garrett Crochet has a legitimate shot. I think Jacob deGrom, if he stays healthy, has a legitimate shot to beat Skubal, to dethrone Skubal. It's not quite as open and shut as Aaron Judge's. And in terms of Rookie of the Year, it appears that sorry about that. It appears that everyone's expecting the Blue Jays to take home the Rookie of the Year honors, whether it be by Savage or by Okamoto, who I think both are really strong candidates. But I've talked about him before. Munetaka Murakami has a chance to just go crazy. And I think that his opportunity for power and stardom on a team that's kind of starless right now. I know Colson Montgomery is really, really cool. Murakami, to me, has the best chance to win the Rookie of the Year. I think it's going to, in terms of offensive production, he's going to be close to guys like Carter Jensen and Samuel Basallo, who are on that list with him. But Murakami, I loved the signing. I loved the fit. And I think he's just ready to prove all the haters wrong, to be the Jose Abreu that the White Sox have been missing, of just a really professional at bat with power. So I'm going Munetaka Murakami for my Rookie of the Year award. I think obviously Yustavage has a good shot there. A lot of people have been talking about Dylan Beavers and Kevin McGonigal and guys that we don't know when they're going to debut. To me, could one of those guys come up and do it? Absolutely. Is Murakami going to get a shot from opening day to put together a 30 home run season and win the award? Yes. And that's the difference. I don't think Basayo has 30 home run pop yet in his range of outcomes. I think Jensen's more of a 20 home run guy. 30 plus home runs for Murakami, I think, gets it done in the American League. I appreciate each and every one of you who sat through all of this, whether you broke it up into chunks or you watched the whole thing through while you were sorting some baseball cards or working out or doing something with your day. I appreciate you guys for doing this. We'll have another longer episode next week going through the NL in a similar fashion. I'll try to tighten certain things up, but your boy likes to ramble. I'm Dom Manna, and I'll see you guys next week.